Good evening, everyone. Glad to have you here on another wonderful Monday for our 12th episode of Onward to Victory, the first and potentially last with us three hosting for 2025. My name is Noah Reed, and as always, joined by
Ella Wolter-Sánchez
and Jordan Talley.
Well, it's been a little bit since we've been all back in the studio, and thanks again to all of our listeners for joining us today. We hope you guys had a great holiday season. Happy New Year's. Speaking of, what was the best part of your guys' holiday break?
I would definitely say the best part of my holiday break was the break. It was great to be able to just be home with my family. I got to see a lot of out-of-town family, which was nice, hang out with all my friends that go to out-of-state colleges, and get to go out of town with my family and just relax at the beach in California.
My favorite part was pretty much just the break itself, too. I did a lot of hockey things. I road tripped to Vancouver, Canada. I went and saw the Vancouver Canucks play. And then I saw, 4 major junior hockey games while I was home. So that was a great time.
I told you guys this a little bit earlier, but I finally got to see the Sacramento Kings win a game 6 times trying, 6 times the charm apparently. But with Doug Christie as intern head coach, they've turned it around, 7 straight wins. But I did get to spend a week in snowboarding up in Tahoe, and I hadn't snowboarded in 3 years, and I was a little nervous. I was like, gosh, I really don't want to hurt myself. But it snowed the first day, and literally we're in the ski lifts, and they're shaking back and forth. The winds are blowing us side to side.
Wow.
And so I think that helped because then after that, everything was nice and perfect. I was like, oh, this isn't really scary. So
I wish I knew how to snowboard.
I'm going skiing this weekend, and I'm so excited. Snowboarding and skiing is the best.
I've never been. All right. First up, we have our ASU Team of the Week, which hockey. I mean, they've been on an absolute heater with the recently Desert Hockey Classic that they host every year, and their recent series with North Dakota. While we have been gone, there's been a lot of hockey going on in Mullet Arena. ASU hosted its annual hockey tournament the first weekend of January as they hosted UMass, Cornell, and RMU for the Desert Hockey Classic. The Sun Devils' first duel of the weekend took place in a 7-3 victory over RMU. Ryan Kirwan was the first star of the night as he landed the opening goal of the night as well as a hat trick, giving him a 3-point night, as well as freshman Colin Potter seeing the back of the net a couple of times. Colin Potter just continues. He's not even 18 yet, by the way, and he's been a dominant force on this Sun Devils hockey team. The Sun Devils also then went to advance to the tournament to take on ranked number 16 Cornell. The 19 Devils at the time had no problem closing out the weekend in a win with a stellar shutout from goaltender Gibson Homer as they marched onward to victory and 4-0.
Love the little reference there, by the way.
I was cooking that one up. I said, this one's good. Putting that one in there. As the Sun Devils stunned the Big Red, 4 different goal scorers got on the scoreboard, one being the on-fire Ryan Kirwan as he tallied up a goal and an assist. Homer also stood on his head in the crease as he claimed his second shutout of the season with 34 saves, 17 of those shots coming at him in the third period alone. The Devils took home the trophy for the second consecutive year for the Desert Hockey Classic, as well as Ryan Kirwan named the Desert Classic MVP and the KJ Branding NCHC Forward of the Week with a total of 5 points, 4 goals and an assist, and a hat trick and a plus-minus rating of +4. So the Devils have been on fire. They had a little bit of a slump, got back up. As we're seeing as well, I know we talked about this earlier in the season, they were kind of figuring out who their number one goaltender was going to be. I'm pretty sure Homer took both games in this classic. That was we saw him as being their number one, but now Luke Pavicic has also been seeing more time in the net, but it has also continued to be split through a lot of the series. One goaltender getting one game, the other one getting the other, and we're just seeing pretty good results with that tandem there. Just this past weekend, ASU took on the number 14 Dakota Fighting Hawks as they faced old goaltender and ASU goaltending record holder TJ Simpenfelter after he hit the transfer portal last season. Although ASU split the series with 1 win and 1 loss, their victory was enough for them to be voted as the number 13 team in the nation. Once again, the Friday night matchup saw 4 different goal scorers, 2 athletes with multi-point games, and Lucas Sillinger with 2 assists, and Kyle Smolin with a goal and an assist. Gibson Homer also made another strong impression with only 1 goal allowed and 27 saves. As well as splitting the series, both of ASU's starting goaltenders got their shot in the crease, with Luke Pavicic starting in the second game of the series in the 3-4 OT loss. The Inferno was absolutely heating up for this game and this series, as both teams had a total of 39 penalty minutes in just the second game. Things were getting a lot of interference, a lot of roughing calls.
Sounds like.
I'm pretty sure someone got ejected with a game misconduct. There was a lot of sticks flying, gloves flying, lots of stuff going on.
Yikes.
Well, our team Schlein found the back of the net twice with a multi-point game, as well as Lucas Sillinger tallying another 2 assists on the board. While Luke Pavicic allowed 4 goals in, including the overtime goal, he made 32 saves. And once again, these overtime losses even are worth something. Every overtime loss awards a point. So especially with all these matchups being the rest of the season being NCHC conference matchups, every point counts. So even just picking up those OT losses, you always would rather win in OT than in regulation. And just a note here, I found this very interesting. Even with not everyone back from break yet on Friday and Saturday, both games in the series had a little more than 5,000 people in attendance. So Mullet was rocking, the Inferno was rocking. This weekend, the Sun Devils are prepping to take on St. Cloud away from home before their next series versus Colorado College at home, January 24th and 25th. So lots of hockey going around, and people are excited for it.
Yeah, it basically seemed like they had a little residency going on over winter break with how much hockey they had, and it's great to see that there was more than 5,000 people in attendance for each game, and that they still have this traction going. I mean, again, not a big hockey person. I didn't realize how long the hockey season is. I feel like we've been talking about hockey forever.
Yeah.
And it's definitely seems like it's great that it's still notable enough to talk about consistently. And it seems like they're continuing to stay on top.
For sure.
And I think it just continues to show that, like, there is so many sports at ASU that just don't get the attention they deserve. And I think we've talked about them because we're trying to bring that to light. And you'll hear from more teams who are kind of under the radar later on in the show, just to kind of tease the lead here. But I think I do want to ask you one question, Jordan, because you mentioned with Homer Gibson and Luke Pavicic switching up between the goal. How does that benefit a team, being able to rotate, having not just like an A tier and a B tier, but having a 1A and a 1B?
Yeah. I don't see many teams doing that. Having especially 2 goalies that are consistently being at the same thing. You benefit from having different play styles is really what it is. Goaltenders have a lot of fluid in how they play. They can be more in front of the crease, more sit back in their net. It's just a different play style. And if you have teams with different offensive strategies that score goals differently, you can pick your goaltender based on how they play in situations and teams that maybe score more goals from the blue line or more close to the net, and just how they perform. So even being able to pick one and still kind of weighing out the same options, that is not really heard of. Usually have a starter and a backup, and that's very lucky that ASU doesn't have that.
Hey, and speaking of guys who can score in different ways, the next guy up, he scored in a few different ways over the break. Take it away, Ella.
We've talked about him a lot, but I figured since he's not a Sun Devil anymore, we could speak about Cam Scadaboo one last time for our ASU athlete pick, considering the fact that just the one thing that stuck with me this whole time is that he won the MVP for the Peach Bowl, and it was the first time in the Peach Bowl's history, 26-year history, that a member of the losing team won the award. And I think just that statistic itself speaks volumes. I mean, the game itself was very up and down, lots of emotions.
Stressful.
Very stressful. But one thing that stayed consistent was Cam Scadaboo consistently picking the team back up and scoring and just being there for the team, even though he was puking on the sidelines. I thought at some points it looked like he couldn't even get up off the floor. And yet he was continuing to push and, just stay out there for his team. And that loss was a 39-31 in double overtime. And in that game, Scadaboo had 143 rushing yards, 99 receiving yards, and 42 passing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, a passing touchdown, and a 2-point conversion. And he had that amazing overtime touchdown, which unfortunately we just weren't able to match, or the Sun Devils weren't able to match Texas's, answer back with their 2 touchdowns. But he brought back the Sun Devils from a 16-point deficit in the fourth quarter. The first half of the game, it didn't really look like, it just looked like it was going to be a huge blowout, upset. And thanks to him, he was able to bring back the Sun Devils and make it look like it was a contending game. I mean, overtime, that's a contending game. And, as I mentioned a few seconds ago, his physical appearance, he didn't appear to be able to get up really or be able to walk. I mean, eventually after he scored, he didn't even do celebrations. It was just like, on to the next, and let's just get this over with. And Coach Kenny Dillingham joked that the performance was puke and rally. He just kept rallying and trying to get his team, carrying everybody on his back essentially. And he finished, and here's another thing that I found interesting. He finished 5th in that season's Heisman Trophy voting. But during the broadcast, several times they just kept saying they really should have taken him more seriously in New York. And I have to agree. While there was a blowout in the first, half of the game, I was a little embarrassed, I have to say, by his crap talking. I was like, he did all this crap talking, and now what? The Sun Devils are here, and it kind of looks embarrassing. But then once the second half came, I still don't think crap talking before a game is the best idea. But once that second half came, it's like, okay, it seems like he's continuously saying that people need to take him more seriously. And yet again, he proved that they do need to take him more seriously. And now he's preparing to enter the NFL draft after his final season at ASU. And he's projected to be a mid-round pick of the 2025 draft, which takes place on April 24th through the 26th.
That said, where do you guys think that Cam Scadaboo lands? I'm thinking 3rd round.
I think
really
3rd round. And everywhere else I was reading was 3rd round, late 3rd round-ish. I think so.
I mean, I'm a big Cam Scadaboo fan myself. I think he's severely underrated and underappreciated in almost
100%.
every single aspect of his game. I feel just like nobody understands. And honestly, I have no idea where he's going to end up.
Yeah.
Wherever he goes, hopefully he gets that recognition because...
And drafts are so interesting. I mean, I know for every sport, it's obviously different, and I don't 100% know everything, because then there's also, high school, and college rules, and then there's et cetera, et cetera. I don't necessarily know all the rules for the NFL draft, but I was reading that it was projected 3rd round after this star,
That's
after
insane.
the Peach Bowl and after how great he did, because previously they were talking about a free agent draft, which I'm just telling you what the article said, but
that's just insane to me.
I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's what all the articles are predicting around the 3rd round, but it'll be interesting to see, and hopefully he lands somewhere great in the NFL like lots of ASU students feel he deserves.
Yeah, and speaking of landing up in good places, the men's tennis team has landed pretty darn good in the ITA preseason poll as the number 18 ranked team. Did not know this. They were 21st last year after beating then number 3 ranked Wake Forest. That's pretty good. They're returning doubles and singles All-American senior from Overland Park, Kansas. That's Murphy Cassone, who won the first ATP Challenger of his young career in the offseason. He's in his 4th season as a Sun Devil and was the Pac-12 All-Conference first-team selection, as well as, get this, 2-time Pac-12 Player of the Week. Again, rest in peace, Pac-12. The team welcomes 4 freshmen, 2 transfers in Matthias Bondes, who we touched on, I think, all the way back in maybe our first episode of the show.
Yeah, that name sounds very familiar.
And then Matic Dimmick to the roster for 24-25. Bondes, again, was the highest ITA and UTR ranked player in the transfer portal, checking in at number 57, respectively, following his 23-24 performance. And then Dimmick won 9 singles matches and 10 doubles victories last season at Alabama. They're set to open their 2025 season in a doubleheader against LMU and New Mexico State this Thursday, January 16th at the Whiteman Tennis Center. What are your guys' thoughts on the men's tennis team?
Yeah, it definitely, I feel like tennis is another one of the sports that not just ASU, but Arizona is a great breeding ground for. I feel like tennis and baseball, and I guess lacrosse is more of like an East Coast thing, but tennis and baseball I feel like are, and swimming.
I would also say, like, sorry, not to cut you off, but like high school football is like huge here.
Yes. And I definitely feel like tennis, you could probably, I'm sure there's lots of people from here on the tennis team, and tennis is not a sport, like you were hinting at earlier, that I have considered or thought about at ASU. It's just we have so many sports, and it's definitely interesting. I mean, we have talked about Bondas before, and it'll be, you know, being ranked for the preseason poll at number 18 is definitely higher than a majority of the teams that people talk about a lot. So it'll be very interesting to see. It seems like they already have some good traction for the spring season and a lot of eyes on them, at least nationally, with that preseason ranking.
Yeah, I mean, just we're hammering the head of the nail over and over again that ASU has so many sports that they are also very good at. Like preseason polls, number 18. I mean, I'm not a huge tennis fan. I don't really know much about tennis. It's not really big in Washington, but yeah, I mean, it's just really cool to see so many athletes come up and be recognized in these polls. Pac-12 Player of the Week, All-Conference First Team, stuff like that come from, you know, ASU's very own. So.
And I think the most interesting thing, too, now is with tracking all of these spring sports as they overlap with the fall. We're going to be having a busy schedule. I know Blaze is just going to be super busy. Game of the week coverage, broadcasting between whether it's basketball, whether it's hockey. We're going to have tennis. We're going to have baseball, softball coming up. It's a lot to juggle, a lot to track if you are a ASU sports fan, but there's a lot to be excited for.
Oh, 100%. And those year-round sports, too, golf and swim, still in action. And speaking of high school or Arizona sports that are big, our high school prospect, Andrew Jacobs, is a baseball player. And my note here, Arizona is consistently a talent pool for baseball, and the class of 2025 is no exception. And Andrew Jacobs is from the class of 2025 from Mountain Ridge High School, which is in Peoria, Arizona. And he's a right-handed pitcher / outfielder who's 6'2" and weighs 170 pounds. Mountain Ridge High School has another U of A commit that is a catcher named Joe Forbes, and Mountain Ridge was featured in the 6A playoffs but did not make it to the finals last year. And he is the number 4 right-handed pitcher in the state. And U of A, as a college, sits at number 21 in preseason rankings of college ball. But something I found interesting while I was doing my research to figure out who exactly we should choose for our high school prospect, Boston Kellner, we touched on previously, I don't know which show, and he is one of the top in the country, and he's from Arizona, and he's the number 1 prospect in Arizona, and he is actually committed to Texas A&M, who is the number 1 school in the preseason poll. So I thought that was quite interesting that we have a baseball player here in Arizona, who is going to be at the number one school for baseball, projected number one school for baseball in the 2025 season. And he received a 9.5 score on perfect games overall for his performances so far, with his senior baseball season still on the loading. Just another great talent for baseball in Arizona.
I mean, 9.5 score just based off of what he has up to his junior season, and he still has his senior season as a top, very high prospect. That is insane. And, Arizona is truly a baseball state, and I never realized this. I was flying home, and I was looking out the window, and all I saw was baseball field, baseball field, baseball field, baseball field.
It's year-round.
And I had no idea, coming from, up north, that baseball was such a big deal here. No clue.
Yep. I mean, Diamondbacks might not always deliver, but we have Major League, we have Minor League and fall ball, and then we have spring training, only here in Florida.
I do have one question for you. You mentioned he's the number 4 right-hand pitcher in this state. My little brother plays as well. He's a left-handed pitcher. Is there – because forgive me, I've watched baseball games, but I've never really paid attention too much on right versus left-hand pitching. Is there an advantage to one side over the other?
It depends on the hitter and if they're a righty or a lefty.
Okay.
That's all it depends on. It's not like, oh, right-handed pitchers are the best pitchers in the league. It's solely dependent. That's why Major League sort of changed their rules on the pitching changes, because managers would just put a pitcher out there for one batter because it lined up perfectly. And then now I think you have to face at least 3 batters, or I don't exactly remember. But, yeah, it's just dependent on the hitter to pitcher lineup.
Okay. Well, we're going to slide on over to our last topic of the day. ASU Gym is getting started. The Sun Devils wrapped up their 2024 season with a final record of 8-5. They earned the number 16 ranking on the road to nationals 1 year ago. Now in 2025, they return head coach Jay Santos for the 9th consecutive season, along with a variety of returning athletes. This includes Californian board grad students Sarah Clark on beam team with Emily White, who represents both the floor and beam teams. The duo was also recognized in the 2025 Big 12 preseason team. Another graduate athlete, gaining recognition was Jada Mangalas for all-around category, which combines the scores of all 4 apparatus, which I did some research, means all equipment and events for the women: vault, bars, beam, and floor. The team enters the new year with the 20th place ranking on the WGCA preseason poll, with 6 of their scheduled opponents also ranked within the top 25 teams in the nation. Before I let you guys know how they did in their first meet of the season, how familiar are you guys with gym? Because I'm really not.
Well, I am on the gymnastics coverage team, so before winter break, not very familiar, but I went to their maroon and gold meet, and that was the first time that I really saw gymnastics besides, watching it at the Olympics, because I always find it fascinating to watch them at the Olympics. So I would say average.
I don't really know how collegiate gymnastics works, but I used to be a gymnast. So, yeah, I'm somewhat familiar. I haven't done it in a while, but I always watched the Olympics. You see that, especially Jordan Childs, who's just on the Olympic team. She's from Washington. So I was like, okay, and we have the same name. So I was like, cool. But yeah, just keeping up with stuff like that, I'd say know what's going on. Maybe 60 to 70% of the time.
Did a little bit of research for a high school story that I did on them 1 year ago, and I was pretty interested. There's a lot of different things that go into gym, and I'm really excited to see how they do for the whole season, but they did travel to the Freeman Coliseum in San Antonio, Texas for their first competition of the season. The Sun Devils entered with 1 win and 3 losses. They fell to number 7 Auburn and number 9 ranked Penn State respectively, and came up short of number 24 Maryland. So the next time the teams will compete is January 20th for the Wasatch Classic in Utah. The Sun Devils will battle Boise State, Iowa State, and San Jose State in their last round of tournament play before they get ready to take on their Big 12 opponents. We wish them the best of luck. Final thoughts here in our final few seconds of Onward to Victory.
I would definitely say that Coach Jay Santos is very technical. After the maroon and gold meet, it was definitely a very successful meet, and I asked him how he felt about the girls and their performance, and he just was very picky about the little details and didn't really have any positive criticism, which I feel like is a good thing. Not in like a negative way, just we need to be better, and I think that's a great quality as a coach. But I'm excited to see them, and hopefully they go higher in the rankings.
I mean, nothing much on gymnastics, just we'll be back.
We'll
be back.
Yes, we will. Actually, you guys can tune in. We officially have our time slot, the three of us do, for the Scouting session. Shameless plug here. But we will be live Wednesday afternoon, 2:30 to 3 p.m. Catch you all there. Thank you guys all for listening.